I want to introduce this whole conference to you, and I've never done this before the way I do it here, because I'm going to hint at all the other presenters and all the other presentations that you're going to see the next 2 days, because I think it's important to realize how much of a gift we have being able to go to conferences and being able to talk to people and being able to learn things. Because we've forgotten in the last years just how beautiful our job is and how you really got to love front end, because it's a job that is for everybody and involves everybody out there. And instead, we just get into a world where we say, like, we automate everything. Everything has to be a build script or a package, and you have to have a computer science degree, otherwise you're not a real developer. And we're kind of locking people out, and we're becoming too competitive rather than understanding that what we're doing here on the web is replacing radio, replacing TV, replacing newspapers, being the new media that anybody can take part in, but we turn it into yet another software platform, and that's why I wanted to give it the title Automating All the Wrong Things. That is a screenshot from the, I'm a big movie buff, I love movies, so if you want to talk about movies for hours, we can do that later. And this is from the remake of Total Recall, and it's quite funny because it's a world where they have robot police force, and they got humans building the robots. So something went very wrong there along the way, and I hope that we're not getting into this world where we're working for computers and programs and for robots, but we actually work for other human beings. Now, I'm Chris, Code Poet on Twitter. If you don't have enough pictures of hedgehogs, kittens, and random stuff about JavaScript in your Twitter feed, you can do that. I live in Scotland, which is the rest of the UK that's left after Brexit, where I'm allowed to be in. And I'm not bitter about this at all, so I put that in there. It was quite fun to leave London and not sleeping the last 2 days after that happened, and then coming here. And I thought it would be hard to get to Israel because I've never been here. And I went through customs, and I thought, like, okay, it's going to be like a green room with an interrogating lamp in my face and things. But I just went there, showed my passport, she gave me a sticker and went through, and then she's like, oh, there's money in your passport. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, this is not a bribe. This was just an accident. And I'm like, it's British pound, come on, it can't be a bribe. I have 7 points to make today, and I want to go through them bit by bit, but I'm not going to read them out to you because that's what bad presenters do. Instead, I want to remind you about the beautiful things that we do here on the web. The web is independent of platform. It really does not matter if you got a Windows, a Linux machine, an OS2 machine, or whatever. The web is available to you. As long as that thing can understand HTTP and have some sort of browser, even a text browser, even a robot or an API that consumes content from the web is allowed to be on the web. And we see far too many things at these conferences where everything is a MacBook Pro and you have to have a Mac to use it. This is not open. This doesn't make any sense to me. It's independent of platform. It's independent of browser. We have these fanboy fights, which browser is the best and which is the most amazing. And it just drives me crazy because in essence we cannot control what browsers the end users have there. And they don't choose a terrible browser because they hate us. They just don't know what a browser is in most cases. They have a little icon on their phone, they click on it, they go online with that, or even on the desktop. So if you find somebody with an old Windows machine that has only Internet Explorer, an old one, install the newest Firefox, connect the icon of Internet Explorer to that Firefox, and they will not know the difference, but they have a better browser that way. So help with that. I joined Microsoft to get rid of Internet Explorer. That's why I'm working on the Edge team. And I hope that people will understand that this has to happen, just in terms of security. It's also independent of connectivity, and you realize that when you come here and you get your phone out, or you try to get a wireless connectivity, or you go somewhere else, we have no way of telling how fast our users are on the internet. So make sure that your products are really fast and they really work for everybody out there. And it's independent of location, or we wished it would be. It's so much fun to see how many times you try to download something in one country and it says like, oh, that's not available in your country because we hate you, or something like that. So In essence, you should not publish per country when you publish on the web. And far too many people misunderstand that and don't even think about localization. Probably here, not that much of an issue, but I worked on websites that were in Hebrew and Arabic, had right to left, and 72 languages at times. And when you go to somebody in California and you show it to them and they're like, oh my God, I could never do that. And I'm like, that's what publishing on the web means. Go to the people, give the people the content that they need. And it's independent of ability. A lot of people still don't understand that accessibility is not building something extra for people with disabilities. It's thinking about different abilities and making it better for everybody by doing that. And the more you embrace issues, and to me, something like bad connectivity is also an accessibility issue. To me, as somebody standing with a phone in the sun and not being able to see the screen, that's also an ability issue. Something they can change readily by getting out of the sun, if that's even possible in this country. But you cannot have somebody who's blind say like, why don't you just get sighted to go to my website? So think about disability and think about accessibility as a hardcore user test, as an opportunity to improve your products for everybody out there, not only for a few. It's also independent of skill set. Anyone can be a publisher. And that's why I love the web. I was a radio journalist, and then I found the internet, and I'm like, cool, I don't have to spend money to publish, and people can see me worldwide, and read me worldwide, and comment worldwide on my stuff, translate it into other languages for me. That is amazing. We should not be in 2016 in a world where you have to know the command line to start writing CSS and publish something on the web. That makes no sense. Anybody is invited to publish things on the web. That's why I'm excited about companies like Wix and Squarespace and all these things that allow people to publish things easily on the web without having to become a developer. They're not taking our jobs away. They're not taking our issues away because they wouldn't be able to pay us and they don't want to pay us. They just want to put their florist, butcher, whatever website out there and build them and maintain it themselves. And how cool would it be if our clients would be thinking about maintaining the stuff themselves rather than us having to tell them, right? We constantly keep forgetting all these things though, and instead we're thinking about that the web would be so much easier if everybody was thinking like us and everybody had the same connectivity and the best computers and if everybody just used that one browser that we like too much. So we make it easier for us, we make our own little perfect world. Works on my machine, can't be an error, right? And it fascinates me how many times we build things on 2 gigabit connectivities in our office and then are confused when end users say like, oh, there's a problem. Throttle your connections. Be as crappily connected to the web as possible and test your products that way. The amount of interesting bugs you find is quite amazing that way. I used to work for Yahoo and 50K was the size of a website. We weren't allowed to get over 50K in the HTML, and back then there was a lot of like inlining kind of stuff as well. And that was because our end users were on dial-up, our end users were on whatever, we did not know. We made it as fast as possible. Of course, us as people, we have our main browser and we love them to bits. And then we build things mainly with that browser and works for us. Well, the other people should just download that browser, right? It's like otherwise they're not going to have a fun time. And they can't. A lot of times they don't have time. A lot of times they don't have money to download a browser because these are huge things on a data plan that is, for example, capped. And that's why you end up with these things like this website needs Internet Explorer and you cannot run it in Edge, or Inbox only works in Google Chrome, more browsers coming soon. This is the same mistake we did in 1998 where we had like, this needs Netscape 3 and 800 by 600 resolution, which is now ridiculous to look at. But this will be as ridiculous in 2-3 months' time, in 5 months' time, in a year's time. Don't build for browsers. Forget about browsers actually. Think about capabilities because all browsers are evergreen and all browsers are working together on standards that we should be working against. If it's a few pixels off in one browser in one certain environment, nobody's going to die. Nobody's gonna go out and kick you out of your job. But spending 8 hours on fixing that rather than spending 2 hours on making the login system easier will get you more users. Don't think about too much what our problems are. Think as an end user. Think of like, what do they come to our website for? What do they want to get out of it? It's hurtful to the web and our jobs to think about browsers. Browser sniffing, user agent sniffing is the biggest problem that we have in every browser. I worked on Firefox, I work with Edge now. The amount of people that we built this beautiful new browser, evergreen, new engine, got rid of all the crap that Internet Explorer had in there, went to the website, doesn't work because it tried to find an Internet Explorer string or it tried to guess what the browser is and give you a certain experience for every browser. When Firefox went from numbering to like up above 10, the amount of websites we saw that got the experience of Firefox 1 because people just checked for one digit in the user agent string. Stop doing that. Stop thinking you can know what the browser is because the user agent string is just a lie. It's a huge dirty lie that we tell ourselves, and I can change my user agent to anything anyways. We deliver suboptimal solutions that have an expiration date that way. At the same time, we preach that the web will always survive because it is longevity. It's like in 20 years' time, your website will still work on some browser and it will be consumable. But at the same time, we build things right now because, oh, that only works in the latest Chrome? Cool, get it out of the door. Fix it later. The biggest lie in engineering. If anybody tells you, do this now, we give you time to fix it later, they're lying to you. It's the same as like, yes, I read the terms and conditions, or no, I will not download things. It's the same lies, you know, like just, you have no time later to fix it. Do it right the first time, or do it good the first time and make it better the second time. But don't say, okay, I've jumped through hoops and make it work in one browser because that's all we need. Bruce Lawson is going to finish this conference with his talk, and he's going to cover a lot of these things about internationalization and about emerging markets and about technologies that help you bring technology and bring your products to the world that is coming next. Because the next users are not going to be in London, for sure, and not going to be in San Francisco, New York, or somewhere like that. The next users are going to be in emerging markets, Africa, India, Indonesia, all these places where people are ready to go online and ready to use the web in a sensible fashion, not like we do to spew hatred at each other and like upload pictures of TV series, but for them, it really is a different world. It means that they have a business that they can sell things. It means that they have a school where they can learn things by looking at Wikipedia. And it's our job not to lock them out. Our job is to think about our end users. We're a delivery service. We deliver content to our end users. We have no right to ask them to do any change in their environment or their ability to consume our things. And it's very important to think that. And Bruce is going to give a great talk about this. I'm actually covering every single speaker at this conference that has to do something, so no pressure for them. Leonie, here in the leather pants for some reason, will also talk about accessibility and will also explain to you what it means to understand how to build something that is available to people and how to find out what's going wrong in your products. And it's I've seen the talk before, it's going to be very interesting in terms of finding out what you can do to make things more available for people. We live right now in a beautiful world of web development, though. When I started, it was Netscape 3 Gold, Navigator Gold, and Internet Explorer 4, and these kind of things. And my debugging environment was an alert. And then you ended up in a loop where you pressed enter like 60 million times to get rid of all the alerts, because it didn't do that back then as well. Or you had like PWA, the personal web server, PWS by Microsoft, where it's like if you reloaded in one browser and in another browser to test it, it said too many users connected to your local host. That was the kind of stuff that I had to work in. And nowadays, our environment is beautiful. Every browser is gorgeous. Well, most, yeah. Every browser that you should use is gorgeous, and they come with great tooling. They come with great user interaction stuff. I actually found myself starting from Microsoft and seeing people using Edge. I have no idea how to use a browser because as a web developer, I just click use view source and have developer tools open and fix websites that way. And I don't use any of these features like the annotations, for example, or the sharing features and all the UX features that end users have out there. We always think our end users are super savvy and they know the same things that we do. We had an outrage when we removed the home button. People were confused that there's no home button anymore. I can't even remember if I ever pressed a home button in my whole life. But for people, it was like, that's how I start my day. I click the home button and go to my home page. And you're like, whoa, this is amazing. But we should think about that as well. But we have a great environment. We've got these great tooling, we've got these great browsers, and we still keep complaining that things could be better. Yes, things could always be better. But look at what we have and celebrate what we have and look at what we learn about what we have as well. Our browsers are evergreen. We have incredibly exciting APIs to create engaging solutions. Like Firefox OS that I worked on was not a success. Mozilla now pulled it off and said like we're not building mobile phones with Firefox OS anymore. But the research that went into it, all the new APIs to access the hardware of mobile phones that make mobile phones exciting, like accelerometer, location, these kind of things, all that research had a benefit, and we have all these now standardized across all the browsers. And that's pretty amazing if you think about it. I go as far as we have no excuses, seeing just how far our tooling has advanced over the years. Our websites being slow, our websites being buggy, there is no excuse for that. Because the insights that developer tools give you nowadays is ridiculous. You find how much memory consumption each tab has. You find out which layer generates how much memory and how slow things become. You know when the GPU has been accessed, you know when the browser was stalling, you know when JavaScript was busy. You can actually look into the process of the browser itself, and this is amazing. It is daunting as well for somebody who's, for example, more design orientated and doesn't want to know about these things. Opening developer tools can be like, holy cow, what are all these things? But at the same time, everything is there for you to choose from. So learn about these things. It's very, very insightful to do because there's no excuse for slow websites anymore. We have the knowledge. We could make these things better. Of course, it's not, most of the time it's not our fault. Most of the time it's like, that thing has to go out because the press release is ready. Or that thing has to go out because the new version of our software is there, please make this website. But there's nothing should stop us from going back and shaving a few megabyte off, fixing a few things, making things smoother, get rid of stuff. Getting rid of stuff is something we don't do enough. We just put new things in all the time instead of just removing old stuff. It's very important to do that from time to time. We have insight into how browsers work and where our solutions misbehave. One very, very cool thing, if you haven't used it yet and you don't use it every single day if you can on your stuff, is webpagetest.org. Webpagetest.org allows you to put a URL in, and it shows you how long it took to load, what loaded when, how slow it is, how much CPU was used to render your website, and you find out all these little details, all these little niggles, what was the problem with your website by using that service. You can simulate, you can say like, look at my website from a server from America on a 3G connection on a Nexus 5 phone. You can say, I want to be in an Internet Explorer 7 from India looking at my website. So they have servers worldwide that actually load your stuff, and they give you this detailed report once you go in there. They even give you a video of how long it took to actually load your website and what happens when you load it and how long people wait. So in this case, it's now 8.7 seconds. Probably okay because we're all on fast connections and we're fine. If that were a client-facing website, more than 3 seconds, you probably lost half the users already. Because people on their phone were waiting for like 7 seconds, damn, the connectivity is wrong again, and they start reloading. I'm not having a go at this website, but I'm just saying it's a good thing to test these out. And you can even get like from A to F, like the American way of getting grades in school. It tells you what you've done right and what you've done wrong. And it shows you then when you click through this D and the F, it explains to you what you could do to make these things better. A lot is images. A lot is images uploading and huge images being on the web without needing to be there. You also get an insight into like how long it took to load, when the first byte came in, when it started rendering, the speed index from Google, how many DOM elements you had, and so on and so forth. So this is really, really good to just go and come back and make your website better by going there all the time. Don't do it only once. Do about 5 loads and compare them, because that way you get rid of like errors that might be obvious. CSS Triggers is a great website that explains to you what you can do with your animations and with your scrolling parts of the page, and how that slows down the browser and what you can do there to optimize that one. There's a few tricks. I mean, one will change is a big one in CSS. Z-index 0 to make it an own layer is a hack that was necessary for old iOS. Should not be used anymore because it actually uses more memory, but it gets it rendered on the GPU. So there's lots of good tricks on this website to explain to you how to make your website not jiggly when you scroll it, because it feels uneasy for end users if that's the case. Our browser developer tools allow for inspection and creation at the same time. We used to have developer tools like ViewSource. That was basically it. And then we had some JavaScript debuggers, and then we had Firebug finally. Then we had developer tools in Firefox, the Opera developer tools, which were called something. Safari has developer tools. Internet Explorer had the F12 tools, which were part of Visual Studio and then got into the browser. And all of those used to be just for inspecting things, like, okay, why is this thing not green? And you basically looked at the CSS. And then nowadays, when you look at the developer tools, oh my God, they're like full-fledged editors. They're like full-fledged color pickers. They get your all the colors you have in your CSS and give it to you as a palette. There's so much good stuff in developer tools. We don't need to actually spend extra money on some software to build things. We don't, other people might. But just doing things in developer tools day to day, just open them up from time to time, play with them, find out something new. Try a feature that you haven't tried yet and find out what the thing does. It's very, very exciting and very interesting to do. Also in terms of seeing how many websites are really badly done is quite fun to do. There was an American airline a few years ago where the air miles that you had with the airline was a global JavaScript variable. So you went there, you bought a normal ticket, and the second time you went there, you bought a normal ticket, you went to the developer tools, you gave yourself millions of air miles, you got a free upgrade to first class. And then somebody blogged about it and they shut it down. Don't do that. If you find things like that, don't blog about them. Also, the amount of e-commerce websites where you can actually do negative amount of things that you buy and then it causes a problem in their finance software and normally you get some vouchers for that is also quite interesting to see. So developer tools are there for us and sometimes they're dangerous as well. I mean, you probably saw that a year ago or so where somebody had this like, oh my God, my browser split in half and now I'm seeing the matrix-like thing. The developer tools popped open and that person was just freaking out because, oh God, what happened here? And it was something, what was it like, child note but not being loaded or something. And she's like, what's that about protecting children? Should I talk to the police about this? And it was just very exciting. But that we can write whole websites in a browser with developer tools nowadays, I thought that would never happen, but we have it now. And they're all different and they're all better in one case and another. So again, if you like the Chrome developer tools, great. Don't say that people should not use the Firefox ones because they're used to those. You use what you're actually most efficient with, and that's very important. Almost all of our creation tools are extensible, and we can add functionality to them as well. So if you want to get away from like being a front-end developer and you want to start thinking about contributing to browsers, the developer tools of the browsers are a really good way of doing that because all of them are written in JavaScript or HTML and CSS. They're not written in C++, so you actually can take your skill set and make browsers better that way. I had that the other day. I work with Visual Studio Code, not because I work in Microsoft, but because it's bloody amazing. I was a textile user, and then I was a TextMate user, and then I was Sublime Text. And I love that it has like inbuilt Git control, and it has inbuilt autocomplete and the insights, and it's written in TypeScript, the whole editor. The editor is on GitHub for you to fork and to play around with. And I saw that the other day, that we have these wonderful autocomplete things. For example, if you do CSS animations, you do 1 second, and then it gives you the Bezier curve numbers describing what the Bezier curve would look like. So you don't need to remember what these numbers are. You just click them, and then you get your animation, and it autocompletes all these things for you. I always thought I'm the keyboard warrior, and I don't need these kind of things, but it makes me much more effective because I don't have to know these numbers. I don't have to look up the Canvas API yet again, because it's actually in there already. There's a color picker in there that if you type in red, it shows you all the possible red colors in CSS with little color swatches. So that's great. And then I realized this, there's an autocomplete element on input. And an autocomplete element is a really good thing nowadays, because on iOS and also on Android, there's lots of features that you can put in there that would, for example, allow you to take a picture of a credit card and fill in the form that way, instead of having to type all this crap in. So the autocomplete has all these features in the What Working Group standard, and in Visual Studio Code, it only had on and off. And I'm like, that's not good enough. What's going on there? So now in my build on this machine, which is now being, my fork is being taken in the main core as well, you have all these features in there. And I didn't have to learn C++, Swing or whatever, or Swift or whatever to do that. All I needed to do was fork Visual Studio itself, open it in Visual Studio Code, which was kind of weird to edit the editor in the editor that you edited in. But all I had to do was put an array in there with the possible values, gave it a label, and then in every element that it applies to, so in this case input, but also text area, autocomplete colon input autocomplete. And that was all I did to make that feature available for everybody in Visual Studio Code right now. And you can do the same with Atom, the GitHub editor. You can look at the Electron project, which Visual Studio Code is based on as well. All of these things are open source, and all of them want your input. Don't think because it's a Microsoft product you're not good enough to actually contribute to this. Don't think because it's a Google product you're not good enough to contribute to this. Our input is very, very important. There's nothing more depressing when you work for an evil large corporation and you manage to get some open source thing out and you don't get contributors. Because then your boss says, like, why did we do this? Well, they will come sooner or later. It's going to be amazing, you know? Examining and altering code in a secure manner has never been more accessible to us. You can contribute, and GitHub is the place to do it. GitHub is also the place to communicate with other humans. I know it's scary. I would have loved to be at that pitch. We're going to make a social network for developers. Okay, next. What's social? Really? But when I, for example, hire people, I look at what they've done on GitHub. I don't necessarily look at your code. That is exciting. But what's more exciting to me is how you dealt with feedback, with bad feedback, with good feedback, how you reported errors to other people. That way I can already see if that person I'm going to hire is going to be possible to work in a team, or it's going to be a diva that wants to be in the corner and do their own stuff. So it's a very, very exciting way for me to find out about people before I even get into the job interview. And there's nothing more depressing than these job interviews where it's like, here's a pen. Can you do a Sudoku validator on the white paper, please, for me? And you're like, no, I can't, because I don't know what Sudoku is and what are you talking about? So we should not be surprised when we get into interviews. Do your homework, find out the people before you actually interview them. Now, today as well, Noam Rosenthal from Wix is going to talk about browser graphics under the hood, how browsers deal with graphics and what they do. In case you didn't know, he used to be the singer of Sepultura before he did that. I loved finding that picture of him. He's going to hate me for this. This is wonderful. But it's very exciting to see how the graphics rendering layer in browsers happen. And as browsers are open source, most of them, some of them. Damn it, what did I say? You can look at that. Also, Jason Lester from Mozilla is going to talk about Inspector Inception, talking about how developer tools are working and how you can debug developer tools themselves. I think he got this pullover from his mom and he had to wear it. But that's, again, tomorrow at 11:30, another talk about that topic. Now, we have these wonderful evergreen browsers, everything was hunky-dory, we got developer tools, we got really cool editors, and then there was this massive threat that came out, which is mobile. Mobile has been around for quite a while, and the web on mobile was always this like red-headed stepchild that nobody wanted to have, you know, because companies that build mobile operating systems realized we don't make money with the web. We allow people to get everywhere with this. How do we make money with our mobile platform? And the answer was that we have to do something else. And the problem was also that the browsers on operating systems in mobile were always hardwired with the version of the operating system. So to get a better browser, you had to get the new operating system. To get the new operating system, you probably had to buy a new phone because the old one was too slow for the new operating system. So we were back to the days where Internet Explorer 6 was hardwired into Windows, and we all hate that. And we did it on mobile. And then we found out that every browser maker, every mobile phone maker, every phone provider, every hardware maker, they all put their own browsers out there. They all forked WebKit or forked Blink and made their own browsers and had them in different stages and put like lots of things in there that users didn't need, but they wanted to show people. And that's why we talked about these web standards that we made, and then now every evergreen browser starts there. And if you look at, for example, in CSS, what different browsers are doing, then you realize the standards are not the big one anymore. And that was a big issue on mobile, that every browser did their own thing, and every browser provider and every mobile phone provider did their own thing. So we were back to square one in terms of our standards work. Mobile is the new hype, and apps were the solution to everything. It's like, there's an app for that. And a lot of times they're like, really? Why do I need an app to get the weather? Why do I need an app to calculate tip and these kind of things? A lot of apps that were built at the beginning and heralded as this great way to make money for developers then became part of the operating system, were not necessary to download any longer. But apps were not built in web technology and were not built in open technology. Well, they were open in Java, and they were then on iOS as well. But they were a different way of developing, and out of a sudden we all had to become engineers to build things and publish things. We weren't allowed to be like the person in their free time that built a little website and did it there. Building apps, there were lots of like build your own app thing as well, but a lot of them were just an iframe inside a container, and it was really slow and really bad. So they were not really apps that people were excited about. Our web technologies weren't good enough to match it. By design, the mobile world was not web friendly. And I gave a TED talk about this, where apps to me were a step back in software distribution, because I cannot charge you for a second version of a website, but I can charge you for a new version of an app. I can take an app away from you from the marketplace. You will not be able to download it any longer, but you cannot do that with a website. So for publishers, it was wonderful to have that control over the end user. I hated it because I don't want to have a game that I loved playing and I cannot download anymore because there's a new version out that I don't want to have, that has features that I don't need. The web was basically the antithesis of making money with mobile, and that's why it failed kind of on it as well. We tried to beat native by playing by its own rules. We took a packaging system, we did HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, made a zip file out of it, put it inside a container, and then submitted it into the iOS store and into the Android store. And we said like, oh, it's going to be good because it's going to be web, it's going to be open, everybody's going to love it. But then they didn't perform the same way because iOS browsers especially didn't allow me in JavaScript to access the hardware, to do the things that made an app on a mobile phone interesting. So we tried to beat native by doing the half-native thing and simulating it, and that didn't work at all. Web solutions on mobile playing field needed to be nimble and fast. They have to be really fast because flaky connectivity, really old phones, bad connectivity, these kind of things. The smaller you can make them, the faster you can make them, the better you will be. And the average website, if you look at httparchive.org, is 2.4 meg. That's not fast, that's not nimble. I've been in Albania the other day, where 1 megabyte on my contract would have been £12. That means the average website is the price of a cinema ticket. So I hope it's as exciting and as amazing than the movies that I'm gonna watch. It's also about 200, 210 HTTP connections as well. Like, really? We taught people that every HTTP connection is slowing your website down years and years ago, but we still do it. The biggest part of what's on the web is images. So think about image optimization. Make your images better. Use the picture element. It's made for that. Don't send the retina image to everybody and then wonder why people are complaining about things. Talk to the Cloudinary people outside. They have some really good stuff going for it there. I'm not sponsored by them yet, but I'm okay with bribes. We rely on fixing cross-browser issues and differences in form factors by adding more and more libraries. How many times have people said, well, we could try to debug that, or we could use jQuery? And we put more and more libraries on top of things. We replace the web with like funky libraries because they promise us no difference between browsers. Spoiler alert, differences between browsers are a good thing. If your website looks the same on every browser in every environment, you've done something wrong. You've given people the wrong experience. People should get a better experience on a faster connection, on a better browser, on a better operating system than on an old system. You should not block out anybody, but you should not give the same to everybody because that's playing to the lowest common denominator. That doesn't make nobody happy. Don't give people on IE6 beautiful things. They're not used to that. It confuses them. Many of the things that clog up the web are not needed any longer. The platform moved on and we should move on with it. Look at what the DOM can do. Look at what ES6 and ES7, the current versions of JavaScript have in them. A lot of times this means you don't have to use that templating language anymore. You don't have to use that library anymore that gives you objects. You don't have to use that library anymore that gives you classes. All of these things moved into the platform itself, and that makes much more sense. Jiri is going to talk about this tomorrow and Embracing Black Magic, the power of code transpilation. Code transpilation means that you take the next version of a language and you transpile it under the hood into something the browser understands. So you don't break the experience for your end users, but you use the next version already of the language that's going to come. That way you can actually write less code, you can write more organized code, you can write cleaner code, and you don't have to worry about the consequences, although there are some costs in transpilation, but Jiri is going to cover that, I'm quite sure. I don't know yet, but now he has to. TypeScript is a great example for that. TypeScript is used in Outlook Online, it's used in Visual Studio Code, in Dojo is built on it soon. Angular 2 uses TypeScript, so that one allows you to write JavaScript in a Java-ish fashion, which is kind of weird, but at the same time, why re-educate thousands and thousands of developers when they could just start writing code in a language that compiles down to something that makes sense for the browser? Alas, every time the web got a new form factor, like the mobile in this case, or Flash even back then, and now VR and like mixed reality kind of stuff, we think we have to totally change our ways. We think we have to do something completely new and we cannot use the things that we did the last 20 years. The web is defined as open and extensible. It can survive changes and you don't have to change your ways completely to do something with it. Taking a page from the book of application and service design, we're applying task runners and package managers to optimize the outcome of our product. That always fascinates me. We've got really, really slow websites with lots of images, with lots of stuff. Let's write some more code to optimize that, rather than take away the code that was there in the first place, optimize before we do it. We write a lot of tools that optimize the things that we've done wrong before. And we undo bad practices after they've been applied, and it feels like overkill. It feels to me like we're applying technology for the sake of technology because we don't want to touch the original version of that website. In the end, we just write more code and it's going to be more server load and everything like that. This was in the Spotify office in Sweden. I absolutely loved how they kept the door open that way. That you put a spanner on top of the button and then you put the, you're like, that. I always feel like a lot of software that we do nowadays looks like that. We try to apply technology to undo stupid things instead of not doing stupid things in the first place. That would be a good way of dealing with it. Nothing says, though, that this is the wrong way. I don't say that NPM, package managing, grunt, gulp are bad ideas. They're damn good ideas. But you should use them to be professional about. You use them as a power tool. You use them as something that makes you more effective and allows you to do things that are repetitive, that are boring, that humans shouldn't do. You should not start with them and make it a dependency all the time. You can, if you have a team that all understands them, but make sure that it's something you can rely on and it's not a alpha that was made there to win Hacker News for the day that will not be maintained a half a month later. So make sure that it make it easy for people to contribute to your things and to understand your stuff. And it's not more professional to use more tools. It just means that you use tools. It does not mean that like I'm a bad JavaScript developer because I don't use Grunt or Gulp or these kind of things. It just means I didn't see the need for it. And a lot of times we try to predict the future. We try to say, I need to use this because it has to scale to infinity when the millions of users will come. Sadly enough, most of the time they don't come. So predicting what's going to come next is not programming. That's called magic, and we don't do that too well as humans. It does, however, make it harder to start publishing on the web, and it can be discouraging for new beginners. If I go to GitHub right now and I contribute to some things, and I've written 5 JavaScript books, and people like, well, no, you can't contribute if you don't do these 12 unit tests, and if you don't put that packaging and that JS source, JS hint kind of thing, and put that there and that there. You're the professional developer, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to contribute then, I'm sorry. And I just feel like, oh my God, somebody coming on the web and finding these beautiful open spaces like GitHub, and then learning like there's rules and rules and rules and rules before you're even allowed to be part of it, that discourages a lot of people. And we're talking about inclusiveness, we're talking about diversity in our market. And if we throw rules in people's faces, they're not gonna come. So let's calm down a bit on that and make it more inviting for everybody to start developing. There's something to be said for being open to solutions that do deliver good results, though. Like packaging managers and NPM solutions and these kind of things, rolling out things quickly, iterating quickly is totally fine. I'm not saying that these things should not be used. I'm just saying they shouldn't be the starting point. We should not always think about them first. And there's going to be a great talk by Ido here, who used to work for the evil Intel Explorer, it seems, or some red E. He's going to talk about AMP. And AMP is a very interesting concept. AMP is a subset of HTML that allows you to build articles that will be featured in Google News very, 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 very fast. Instead of having the problem of loading the website and being very slow, it allows you to publish articles inside a news environment very fast. It was basically the answer to instant articles in Facebook, and it's open source. And Google is looking for people to actually contribute to that project as well. So it's a very exciting project to look at, and I'm hoping that he's going to make a good point about what you can do with that. It feels a bit weird to do something for Google directly, but then you see how many people are reading Google, probably a good idea. And I hope that the findings of AMP, and some of the things are really clever, like every element needs to have a dimension, for example. So you don't have that problem that you're reading an article and then the header image loads and the article goes away and you just can't read it any longer. Everything needs to have a dimension, so the thing can load and can load subsequently without jumping around all the time. The other thing is you cannot have third-party JavaScript. All JavaScript in your page has to be from that same server, which makes total sense as well because that caps on malware as well. So there's some very good things in there. And I hope that the findings that we get from AMP and the successes that publishers have with AMP will make them look at their websites again as well and make them a bit faster and make them a bit easier. Also today, there's Node.js to build microservices architecture by Adi Levy, which is like, I think it's a street dancing there or something. I don't know what's going on there. If you don't care about browsers and you love JavaScript, go into the Node world and use every feature of JavaScript you want to use. This is where you control the engine. This is where you control the execution. This is where you can play with JavaScript any which way you want because it won't break because you're controlling the thing. So there's going to be an interesting talk about this as well. Fact is, though, that if you start fresh now, and you want to refresh your knowledge as well, if you have not developed for a while or you haven't designed for a while, you're in for a treat. There's so much cool stuff to play with right now. Our market and our tooling is so beautiful. I'm getting excited every single day I open my browser and I find some new feature in the browser, or I look at the standards and I read blog posts and I'm like, oh cool, I can do this now in the browser. Let's play with that. We have parity with native mobile platforms. The research that we did in Firefox OS, the research that we did in Tizen, in WebOS, we have all these APIs now that made mobile phones interesting in JavaScript in the browser. We've got battery status, which shows like if the battery is at 5%, stop showing animations. Just be nice to your end user and tell them like, oh, your battery is low. Do you want to save this stuff now? Might be a good idea kind of thing. So think about battery status as something to use in your applications as well. Camera is an input element now. You don't even need JavaScript any longer. You have a full-fledged API to get access to the camera. You've got WebRTC to get access to streaming camera and all kind of stuff. But an input element will do. On mobile phone, it says like, okay, to input this, and it opens the camera app rather than me embedding a video in the page and doing the resizing and all these things. You don't need that any longer. Device motion and orientation, shake to delete, like find out what the phone is moving about. Don't know what can do in websites with that, but for games it's super exciting. Vibration, you can make the phone vibrate, and you can send a sequence there, so you can vibrate it in a sequence. That's really good for notifications and stuff like that. File readers, you can read files and you can read them byte by byte, so you can actually understand what the file is while you're loading it. You can validate a file while you're loading it. I think I did the other day, for example, is the JPEG has embedded thumbnails in the JPEG file itself. So instead of generating a thumbnail of a JPEG every single time, you can just read the first 100 bytes and use that thumbnail to display before you load the whole image. And you can do it in a file reader in a byte-by-byte case. You have file transfers where you can have a proper progress bar like we always used to use Flash for. You can read and know how far down the line you are and if the file is still valid and so on and so forth. So you got streaming APIs to stream content into the browser and from window to window. It's amazing what you can do with those things. Media capture, you can get a video and you can record a video, record an audio file in the browser itself, and network information that tells you how fast the user is connected. But that only is an assumption. It's Wi-Fi, but that could still mean that the neighbors are downloading Game of Thrones and it will still be slow. But we have all these APIs in the browsers themselves, and whoops. And when you do a comparison of what APIs we had to simulate with something like PhoneGap, because native didn't have in their browsers, and we have them web capable now, the only thing that's missing is a contacts API, and that's a good thing, because I don't want you to access my contacts from a random web page. There's no shortage on up-to-date free information and articles, videos, and even full online courses. So look around, watch videos, listen to talks, download slides, do these kind of things. All this stuff is free. And it's so cool to learn that. It's time to reconsider how we tell people about our craft and how we teach them topics based on great old ideas rather than a script or tool to replace them. So don't tell a new web developer, just start with jQuery. Show them what ES6 can do. Show them what CSS animations can do. Show them what developer tools, show them developer tools. Show them the tools of the trade and not like, here's a library, use that one, it's going to be fine. Because it will not be fine. Libraries come and go. So Leah is going to talk about this one in her talk tomorrow morning. Probably, she said she might be a different talk. I'm not quite sure. But the HTML secrets was something I was excited about. But she gave that talk at another conference, so you can watch that as well. And Netta is going to talk about how to teach new programmers so they learn. And that's exactly what I mean. Teach people that they learn themselves. Entice them to find out information. Don't give them solutions. And if you want to learn something yourself, start teaching. There's nothing better than learning something when you teach because you cannot fake it anymore. You have to know it. I wrote JavaScript professionally for years and years, and then I wrote my first JavaScript book, and I'm like, oh my God, I faked it for 5 years. I got money for it, so that was okay. But it was just bizarre, and I wrote the book just so my parents know what I'm doing because they don't know what computers are, so I gave them a book, and I'm like, yeah, I wrote a book. By teaching, you learn. Please, please start teaching and start thinking about that. We're right now in a very short time frame to embrace an incredibly exciting opportunity. The form factor of native applications and closed marketplaces is rapidly falling apart. The honeymoon period is over. Nobody believes in apps any longer. It's actually a fact right now that people are tired of constant update requests and notifications from apps they installed. Please come back, use my app again. No, I don't want to. Like, please, there's a new version, download that one. No, I'm on roaming, I don't want to do that. Updates are too big and take too long to download. That's a big thing with native apps as well. It's always a 20 megabyte download, not like 5K for a new logo, for example. And they take up too much data on mobile contracts and limited data access per month. Like if you have only 2 gig per month, downloading these 12 games is just basically burning through it and you didn't do anything with your phone at all. The download numbers tanked. On average in the US, every month, no new app gets installed. People use Snapchat, people use WhatsApp, people use Facebook, people use Google services, and that's it. and on iOS, the iOS services, and watch videos and these kind of things. People stopped downloading apps randomly and using them and discarding them because they got tired of them. And this is great for us because we got an opportunity now to come in with the web back on the in the mobile world. The reason is the limited distribution of marketplaces. Of 1,000 people that find your app somewhere, you end up with 262 on average that really will download and use your app, because they have to jump through all these hoops of like going to the App Store, downloading it, saying yes to all these things, and then going there. On the web, we don't have that. You go to the thing, you already have it on your hard drive. You have it on your phone. You're downloading it by using it. And that beats any native platform all the time. If you're savvy about the web and you want to move things forward right now, look at service workers. This is the coolest, newest, and most amazing feature we have, and it is it is a game changer on the web right now. Service worker is a browser JavaScript API that in essence is a HTTP proxy. So you can control the data coming in and out before your website even gets rendered. That way you can do notifications, that way you can make offline websites, that way you can control changes of images, for example. If the browser is supporting WebP, you can change every JPEG coming into WebP on the fly without having to do that in a build script. It's an amazingly interesting API, and what we built with it is called progressive web apps, and that's the huge new hype right now. But it's incredibly exciting. It means that instead of having native apps that you download and change all the time, your website can become an app by multiple users. So you go there the first time, it just loads, you use it, you're happy. You go there the second time, the browser tells you, oh, by the way, do you want this on your home page? Do you want to have it on the home button on your mobile phone? And by the way, I work offline now. You didn't have to do anything with that because you came here the last time. I cached the content for you, and you don't have to do an extra thing downloading an app. So we're blurring the line between app and web with progressive web apps, and that's a very, very exciting time to be part of this. There used to be last week I was in Amsterdam. There's a progressive web app summit where there's dozens of videos to download and to watch and to learn about this. And there's lots and lots of more content coming. Everybody's on board with that. Google, Mozilla, Microsoft, Samsung, Opera, everybody is working on that feature right now, so that's the hot new thing to look into. Bruce is going to cover that again in his closing talk tomorrow. And if you don't want to think about it as a developer, but you wonder like, how would that affect me as a designer, every progressive app needs to be a very, very creative and very adaptive interface. So we need designers, we need people who know about UX to make that thing work, and we don't even know how to tell the user that the thing works offline right now, or if we should tell them. There's lots of open questions that way. Vitaly is going to cover some of those this afternoon as well in the cutting edge responsive web design talk. And that is all I had, so thanks very much.